Yeah, this story is about probably uh, maybe a week or two when I was spending some time in the orphanage. And one day my brother said to me, you know, the matron there, can't tell you what her name was, but, you know, if she ever comes after you, she usually uses a yardstick and she would, she'll give you a crack. He says, this is all you got to do. I want you to run down the hall and then she'll chase after you, but you want to turn around really fast, move up to her, grab that yardstick out of her hand and snap it over your knee. And he says, if you do that, you won't have any trouble with her. Anyway, I guess I was into some kind of mischief one day, and just what Lori had said, the old matron came after me with the yardstick, and I started running down the hall, and I remembered what he said. I quickly turned around. I grabbed that yardstick out of her hand. I snapped it over my knee, and it was a fairly thick yardstick. And that woman took off like a bullet the other way. So I never really had any trouble with the matrons at that particular stage. One of the things that was rather interesting, there was this one little guy that slept in our dormitory, and he'd been outside playing in the yard, and he found the key to the pantry. So I guess the matron must have lost it out in the yard. Anyway, at night, he'd wake us all up, and he would say to us, okay, now, what would you like from the pantry? Bananas, cookies, whatever it was, an orange. And he'd take our orders, and then he would disappear, and he'd sneak down the stairs. He'd go in, open the pantry, and of course he'd bring everything that we wanted. Now, of course, you got to remember, when you had a meal in the orphanage, you had a meal, you sat around at tables, and, you know, you got maybe one slice of orange, you got some porridge or whatever was happening there, glass of milk. But anyway, we just had a great time. But in the morning, we had to do the laundries, so we took all the peels and all the crumbs and things, and we would wrap them up in the sheets. And of course, when we emptied the sheets out, we got rid of all the peels and that, so that nobody ever knew that he had the key. Anyway, another quick story is that there was one of the things they used to do is on Sunday, people would come in and be looking for foster children or possible foster children, and they generally took the young ones. And there was this young guy, and all week he was telling us that his brother his brother was in the Navy, and his brother was going to, come and take him out of the orphanage. So he was pretty excited. So this one day I'm bringing some milk and I start going upstairs, and I notice this kid sitting on the top window, which would have been on the left-hand side of that building. And he was crying. I went up and chatted with him. I said, what's happening? He pointed out, and he said, there goes my brother's ship out the harbor. And he says, I'm going to jump out the window. And I says, listen, somehow, I don't know what I said to him, but I talked him down. And that particular kid, I don't know his name, but he turned to stone. He was the toughest kid in that orphanage. And of course, if you were bad in the orphanage, the next place you went was reform school. And of course, that's what happened to him. He actually was taken out of the orphanage and sent to reform school. Never did find out what happened to him. Interesting story, though.